The contract lay between them on the scarred wooden table like something alive and poisonous. Nora Brennan's hands trembled as she stared at the ink her husband had signed 3 years before, the debt that had followed him to his grave and now stood waiting to swallow her whole. Across from her sat Cole Mathers, the man who held that debt. Tall, weathered, silent. His eyes were the color of creek stones, unreadable and steady. He had not spoken since she arrived at his ranch outside Benson, Texas, had not smiled, had not offered comfort or threat. He simply waited. "I cannot pay you," Nora said finally, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I do not have the money. I never did." Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. She straightened her spine, gathering the last scraps of her dignity. "But I can work. I can cook, clean, mend. I will work until the debt is settled, however long it takes." Still, he did not speak. Her throat closed. She had buried her husband 6 weeks ago. The fever had taken him fast, leaving her alone in a rented room with nothing but his debts and a single trunk of belongings. When she found Cole Mathers' name among the papers, $1,200 owed for cattle her husband had bought and never paid for, she knew there was only one choice. Come here. Offer herself as labor. Hope for mercy. Now, sitting in this dim ranch house that smelled of leather and wood smoke, she wondered if mercy existed at all. Cole leaned forward slowly. He picked up the contract, his rough hands careful with the brittle paper. For a long moment, he studied it. Then, without a word, he tore it cleanly in half. Nora gasped. He tore it again, and again, until the pieces lay scattered across the table like snow. "You owe me nothing," he said quietly. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "I don't understand. Your husband's debt died with him." Cole's voice was low, firm. "I don't collect from widows." Tears burned her eyes. "But the money is gone," he said simply, "and no amount of your suffering will bring it back." She stared at the torn paper, unable to comprehend what had just happened. She had walked 20 miles to this ranch, rehearsing her plea, preparing herself for servitude, for years of labor under a hard man's roof. And he had just set her free. "I have nowhere to go," she whispered. Cole stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. He walked to the window and looked out across his land, rolling Texas hills dotted with cattle, a creek winding silver through the grass. "You can stay," he said without turning around. "Not as payment, as a choice." "Why?" The question broke from her like something she had been holding back too long. He turned then, and she saw something in his face she had not expected. Not pity, understanding. "Because I know what it is to be alone," he said, "and no one should face that without a place to stand." 3 months earlier, Nora Brennan had been a different woman. She had lived in San Antonio with a husband who smiled easily and promised often. Daniel Brennan had been charming, restless, always chasing the next opportunity that would make them rich. The cattle deal was supposed to be that opportunity. He had borrowed money from Cole Mathers, a rancher he barely knew, and bought a herd to resell in Kansas. But Daniel had never been good with details. The cattle were sick. Half died on the trail. The rest sold for a fraction of what he owed. When he returned to San Antonio, he told Nora the debt was settled. He lied. The fever came in late autumn. Daniel burned for 3 days, delirious and calling for water. Nora sat beside him, wringing out cloths, praying to a God she was no longer sure listened. On the 3rd night, he gripped her hand with sudden strength. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, Nora." She thought he meant for dying. Only after he was buried did she find the papers hidden in his coat. The debt, the contract, the name Cole Mathers written in firm, unflinching script. She had wept then, not from grief alone, but from the crushing weight of betrayal. Daniel had left her with nothing but lies and a debt she could never pay. So she packed her trunk, sold what little they owned, and walked to Benson. Now, standing in Cole Mathers' quiet house, she felt the ground shift beneath her. "I will earn my keep," she said firmly. "I will not take charity." Cole turned from the window. "Then work if it eases your conscience. But you are not a servant here. You are a guest. For how long? As long as you need." The words hung in the air between them, fragile and strange. That night, Nora lay in the small bedroom Cole had given her, staring at the ceiling. The bed was clean. The quilt smelled of lavender. Outside, the Texas night sang with crickets and distant cattle lowing. She had expected cruelty. She had prepared for servitude. Instead, She had found something she did not know how to name. And as sleep finally claimed her, one thought lingered. Who was Cole Mathers? And why had he shown her kindness when the world had shown her none? Morning came soft and golden through the window. Nora woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of boots moving quietly below. She dressed quickly in her plain gray dress, pinned her dark hair back, and descended the narrow stairs. Cole stood at the stove, frying eggs in an iron skillet. He glanced up when she entered, then nodded toward the table where a cup of coffee waited. "You did not have to," she said. "Habit," he replied. "I wake early." She sat carefully, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. The kitchen was simple but well kept. Shelves lined with tin cans and flour sacks. A water pump by the door. Everything in its place. He set a plate before her. Eggs, biscuits, a slice of ham. She stared at it. "When did you last eat?" he asked quietly. "Yesterday," she lied. His eyes told her he knew better, but he said nothing. He simply sat across from her and ate in silence. Nora forced herself to take small bites, her stomach tight with emotion. She had not expected this. Kindness without conditions. Food without demands. After breakfast, she stood and began gathering the dishes. "You do not have to," Cole said. "I told you," she replied. "I will earn my keep." He watched her for a moment, then nodded. "Suit yourself." She washed the dishes in the basin, her hands moving with the steady rhythm of years spent managing a household. Behind her, Cole pulled on his hat and coat. "I will be checking fence lines," he said. "Back by noon." And then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Nora stood alone in the quiet house, water dripping from her hands. She dried them slowly, then looked around. The floor needed sweeping. The windows could use washing. There was mending piled in a basket near the hearth. She set to work. By midday, the house gleamed. She had scrubbed the floors, washed the windows until they shone, mended 3 shirts, and started a stew simmering over the fire. When Cole returned, he stopped in the doorway, blinking in surprise. "You have been busy," he said. "I told you I would work." He removed his hat slowly. "Nora, you do not owe me this." "I owe myself," she said. "I will not be useless." Something shifted in his expression. Not pity. Respect. They ate the stew together in comfortable silence. Afterward, as the sun began to sink, Cole spoke. "There is a town dance Saturday," he said. "Benson throws one every month. You are welcome to come." She looked up, startled. "I am in mourning." "I know." His voice was gentle. "But grief does not require isolation. If you wish to meet people, make friends, the offer stands." She thought of the long, empty weeks ahead. The silence. The loneliness. "I will consider it," she said. Saturday arrived clear and bright. Nora stood before the small mirror in her room, adjusting the black ribbon at her throat. Her morning dress was simple, severe, but it was all she had. When she came downstairs, Cole waited by the door in a clean shirt and dark vest. He looked different somehow. Younger. "You look well," he said simply. They rode to town in his wagon, the horses stepping steady along the rutted road. Benson was small, a handful of buildings clustered around a dusty square. But tonight, lanterns glowed in the community hall, and music spilled into the street. Inside, people greeted Cole warmly. He introduced Nora carefully, explaining only that she was staying at his ranch. No mention of debts. No mention of her husband. She felt the eyes on her. The curiosity. The whispers. But Cole stayed close, his presence steady and protective. A woman approached, middle-aged and kind-faced. "I am Martha Hayes," she said warmly. "Welcome to Benson." "Thank you," Nora replied. "Do not mind the gossip," Martha said quietly. "Folks here are good, but they talk. Give them time." Nora nodded, grateful. The evening passed in a blur of introductions and careful conversations. She did not dance. It would not have been proper, but she watched, and for the first time in months, she felt something other than grief. On the ride home, Cole spoke into the darkness. "You handled yourself well tonight." "I felt like an outsider." "You were," he said honestly. "But that will change." She looked at him in the dim moonlight. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Helping me. Protecting me." He was quiet for a long moment. The wagon creaked. The horses plodded steadily. "I lost my wife 5 years ago," he said finally. "Childbirth. The baby, too." Nora's breath caught. "I know what it is to be hollow," Cole continued. "To wake up and wonder why you are still breathing. People brought me food, checked on me, gave me reasons to keep going. He glanced at her. I am simply returning what was given to me. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I am sorry. So am I. His voice was rough. But sorrow does not have to be the end. That night, lying in bed, Nora realized something had changed. She had come to Cole's ranch expecting servitude, expecting to pay a debt with years of her life. Instead, she had found something far more dangerous. Hope. Autumn deepened across the Texas hills, painting the trees gold and rust. Nora settled into a rhythm at the ranch, rising early, tending the house, cooking meals that Cole ate with quiet appreciation. They worked side by side in easy silence, and slowly, something unspoken grew between them. One October morning, a rider appeared on the road. A man in a fine suit, riding a sleek black horse. He dismounted at the porch, his eyes cold and assessing. I am looking for Nora Brennan, he said. Nora stepped outside, her stomach twisting. I am she. The man produced a folded paper. I represent the estate of Daniel Brennan. There are additional debts. You are required to settle them. Cole appeared in the doorway. What debts? The man's eyes flicked to him dismissively. Money owed to a boarding house, a tailor, and a saloon in San Antonio, totaling $400. I have no money, Nora said, her voice shaking. Then you will work it off, the man said flatly. I have arrangements with a hotel in town. You will serve there until… No, Cole said. The man turned sharply. This does not concern you. It does now. Cole stepped forward, his presence suddenly filling the space. You are on my land, threatening a woman under my protection. The law, Cole interrupted calmly, says a widow is not responsible for her husband's debts unless she co-signed. Did she? The man hesitated. Did she? Cole repeated. No, but then you have no claim. Cole's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of iron. Leave. The man's face flushed. You cannot. Cole took one step closer. Leave my land. Now. For a tense moment, the man held his ground. Then he mounted his horse and rode away without another word. Nora stood trembling. He will come back. Maybe, Cole said. But not here. Not while I am standing. She looked at him. This man who had torn up one contract and just driven away another debt collector. Why do you keep saving me? His eyes met hers, steady and honest. Because you deserve saving. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set, Nora spoke the truth she had been avoiding. I cannot stay here forever. Cole was silent. People are talking, she continued. A widow living with an unmarried man. It is not proper. Do you care what they think? He asked quietly. She considered. I care what it costs you. It costs me nothing. It will, she said. Eventually. He turned to face her. Then marry me. The words hung in the air like something fragile and impossibly bright. You do not mean that, she whispered. I do. His voice was steady, not out of obligation, not out of pity. Because these past months, this house has felt like a home again. Because I wake up and do not feel alone. Because you are strong and kind and you deserve a life that is more than surviving. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You barely know me. I know enough. He reached for her hand carefully, as if asking permission. I know you work yourself to exhaustion to prove your worth. I know you cry quietly at night when you think I cannot hear. I know you are brave even when you are afraid. He paused. And I know I would be honored to stand beside you. She looked at their joined hands. I loved my husband once. Even though he lied to me. Even though he left me with nothing. I know. I am afraid to trust again. I know that too. He squeezed her hand gently. I am not asking you to forget him. I am asking you to let yourself live. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of rose and violet. Yes, Nora whispered. They married quietly in the small Benson church. Martha Hayes stood as witness, beaming. Afterward, they returned to the ranch, and Nora moved her few belongings into the room that had been Cole's wife's. He had cleaned it carefully, removing the ghosts. That night, as they lay together for the first time, Cole held her gently. You never have to be afraid here, he said. I know, she whispered. And she meant it. Winter came, blanketing the ranch in snow. Nora stood at the window one December morning, watching Cole chop wood in the yard. Rusty, the ranch dog, barked happily at his feet. She rested a hand on her belly, where new life had just begun to quicken. Behind her, the house smelled of fresh bread and coffee. The fire crackled warmly. Through the window, she saw Cole glance up and smile when he caught her watching. She had come to this ranch expecting to pay a debt with years of servitude. Instead, she had found a man who tore up contracts and offered freedom. A man who protected without possessing, who loved without demanding. She had come as a widow, hollow and afraid. She had stayed as a wife, whole and hopeful. And when Cole came inside, stamping snow from his boots, she met him at the door and kissed him with a joy she had thought lost forever. "What was that for?" he asked, surprised. "For tearing up the contract," she said softly. "For telling me I owed you nothing." He pulled her close. "You never did." Outside, snow continued to fall across the Texas hills. Inside, the ranch house that had once held only silence now rang with laughter and love. And Nora Brennan Mathers, who had once believed herself ruined, finally understood the truth. She had never owed anyone her suffering. She had only ever owed herself the chance to heal. And in the arms of a quiet cowboy who chose kindness over cruelty, she had found exactly that.